he said there are only two exclusive ways this can become an amendment to the Constitution, that is, or become a constitutional convention, that is either changing the Constitution through 2/3 of both houses of Congress or calling a convention by 2/3 of the states. And I was up to bat immediately following those. And I said, Mr. Chairman, I said, in all due respects to your counsel, I said there is a third exclusive way, a third more exclusive way than the two you've heard. I said, within the framework of the Constitution, you've been counseled correctly. But what you don't realize is that the measure that is before you today steps outside the framework of the Constitution, consolidates the people of the United States and the people in the state of Pennsylvania, consolidates their power in the Constitution-making process, a power more exclusive than the ones that are in the Constitution. The people who created the country in the first place. I said they're rallying those same forces. You take them to Philadelphia to mess up our Constitution. Anyway, many more things in my 15 minutes. Well, they didn't vote on it. They didn't send it to the floor. And there were some behind-the-scenes story that we heard later on that are really funny. But just in a nutshell, the committee had been all prepared to hear from what they called the loony bin. Senator Duke and I were supposed to be the loony bin. Once we got the loony bin out of here, we'll send it to the floor and get back to business, get these nuts out of here. It didn't happen. They did not send it to the floor. Those nuts were armed with something greater than the education of all those lawyers. And it was Ed mentioned it when in the opening remarks, truth. All we had was the truth. All that's in this article that was written is the truth. And those wonderful men in that legislature, God bless them, and the Birchers who worked there, and there's a story behind that I don't have time to tell, but they were visited by members of the Birch Society. By then the whole magazine was out. We had the full color issue out, and they used that to prepare that committee ahead of time. I got a call to New Mexico shortly after that. I went to New Mexico, and our chapter leader there, Lee Gonzalez, had the resolution and said, we're driving. You fly into Albuquerque and then you drive to Santa Fe, where the capital is. And I said, well, let me look at the resolution while we're driving. I looked at it and I said, this is not it. He says, what do you mean that's not it? I said, no, this is an appropriation bill. I said, this is not the resolution. And he thought they'd made a mistake. Well, we wasted your time. And I said, well, let's continue to the Capitol and see what's going on. Fortunately, we did. We found out that they pulled a fast one on us, that they had this thing called Conference of the States under an appropriation bill that had no meaning at all with regard to the authority of sending delegates. And the real bill that had the teeth in it was up in the Senate in another hearing room, scheduled at exactly the same time. And if it hadn't been for Lee, we never would have discovered this, because I was going over the legislative roster looking for Conference of the States, and he picked it out by being familiar with the language of Governor Leavitt. It used some of his terminology in the phony name, and he said, hey, what about this? Let's go check it out. So anyway, we had all of the Birchers were downstairs in the wrong room, and we didn't have time to go get them because it was 9 o'clock exactly, and the hearings were just beginning. So we ran up to the Senate, and there was one guy in there sitting at the table with a microphone, and I pulled right up next to him. I sat right next to him. And he turned to me and he said, oh, are you from Governor Leavitt's office? And before I could answer him, he said to me, he said, the governor called me yesterday and wanted to know if he wanted him to come out there and help, if he needed help in getting this passed. And he said, I told the governor, no, we didn't need his help because we have this all arranged, we have everything all worked out. And he proceeded to let me know how he was tricking us. I'm very honest. And finally I said, his name was Tim Jennings, the majority leader in the Senate. I said, Senator Jennings, I said, I hate to tell you this, I'm on the other side of this issue. I said, I came to kill it if I can, but I was too late. By then, it had already been done. It was on its way to the House, and Lee Gonzalez, the chapter leader, was devastated. So he said, Don, he was really down. He said, they've tricked us, they pulled a fast one on us, we wasted your time. I said, no, you have not wasted my time. I said, we found out how crooked they are here. I said, when it goes to the House, they have to hold a hearing there. I said, you call me and I'll be here. So, on my way back from Montana, I stopped in Salt Lake, and I had a rented car I hadn't checked in yet because I thought I might still need it, and I went to the airport and I called my wife. And she said, where are you? I said, I'm in Salt Lake. And she said, well, you're supposed to be in Santa Fe. They're holding hearings in the House this afternoon. Your tickets are at the United counter. I had 20 minutes to get out, get my car checked in, get back in, get my tickets, and get on that plane. And I made it. So in Santa Fe, I hadn't sat in the committee room too long before here comes, guess who? Tim Jennings, the guy that spilled the beans. And he's followed by a couple of lawyers and had a bunch of satchels under his arm, and they walked in, sat down, and he turned around, looked around, he saw me sitting back there. He called the committee chairman, they had a little huddle, and they all got up and left. I thought, no, wait, they're not going to go to another committee room without me. Wherever they go, I'm going. I trailed those guys. I stuck right with them until I found out where they were going. Fortunately, they were not going to hold, they were going back to the floor. But they had made some kind of a decision which I didn't know. I didn't learn till later. But ladies and gentlemen, I spent 4 days in that building. I was the first one in the morning. I was the last one out at night. They were not gonna mess with the Constitution without a fight. And fortunately, they adjourned. The fourth day, it was adjournment day. Saturday at noon exactly, they were required by statute, constitutional mandate in the state of New Mexico to adjourn at noon on Saturday on a certain day, and that was their last day. They didn't do anything the last day. I had a little time while I was there tracking these guys, keeping track, making sure they were on the floor or not in a committee room. They never did meet again. So here comes Saturday, all the staff people had gone home. There was nobody there, just the Senate and the House, and up in the gallery were some of their children and relatives waiting for them to adjourn so they could all go home together. And I'm sitting there outside the chamber knowing something fishy is going on, and sure enough, at 11 o'clock in the morning, 1 hour before adjournment time, the announcement came over the speaker that SJR 13 was now on the table of the speaker and that would be coming up. I didn't know how long it was going to come up. I didn't know if they're going to bring it up immediately. I was terrified, ladies and gentlemen. I was just terrified, and I'm sitting there all alone. They wouldn't let me in. I tried to get on the floor. I couldn't get hold of any of the people I had gotten acquainted with. They didn't know the arguments because we hadn't held the hearings, and here I am, helpless. The corridor around the two chambers was circular, went all the way around them, and around that is a stone wall. And both figuratively and in reality, I sat there facing, on a bench in that hallway, facing a stone wall. And I had to, where could I go? What would you have done, Nancy? Where could I go? I said, dear God, I said, I don't know what's going on the other side of that wall. But you do, and you've got to help me. You've got to help me, because I'm helpless here. And after that, after those words, ladies and gentlemen, a most wonderful, peaceful feeling came over me, as if there was no crisis at all. Greatest peaceful feeling in the world. It just settled on me. And I got out my notebook and I started writing as fast as I could write arguments in opposition to SJR 13. And I was thinking, well, I've got to get copies of these. I can't write enough for everybody that has to have this. And I knew Kinko's was 2 blocks away. I could never make it there and back without them adjourning or passing the measure. And as I was sitting there writing, I looked up, and here's a young lady, a staff lady who had worked there during the week, whom I had met during those 4 days. And she was wearing her floor pass. And I looked up, And I said, Susan. Her name was Susan Manning. I said, Susan, I said, what are you doing here? She said, I don't know. I said, Susan, I said, I thought you went home yesterday. I didn't. Why not? I don't know. All the staff people were gone. The place was closed up. I said, you have a key to the copy room? Yes. I said, Susan, take these and get them copied. I gave her the names of people to give them to. She didn't know why she was there. And we got them out on the floor, and at 3 minutes to 12, ladies and gentlemen, at 3 minutes to 12, the old 11th hour trick, the gavel was banged, SDR 13 was up for votes, and the vote count started, and I looked up at the light board on the wall where the votes are counted. And at first, they passed us up. The yes votes passed us up. Gradually, we got up to about 12 and 13. The no votes started. The no votes went up. There were 63 on the floor. And when we got up to 31 noes and 32 noes and 33 noes, my eyes filled with tears. And we beat him 42-21 in New Mexico. Now, when I say we, what do you think the other we is? You know very well who it is. The same we that's been defending this Constitution from the beginning. The Constitution is still intact. It has not been destroyed. They've tried to destroy it through conventions and through usurpations and corruptions, but it's still intact. It's just this high-level, ubiquitous nonsense up above that emanates all kinds of noise that makes the people think that it's gone. It's not gone. We're going to save it. Because the great majority of the people of the United States are good Americans, and they're not hopelessly corrupt. They're not unworthy of God's redemption. Let me put it this way. But they want you to think so. They want you to think, and particularly us in the Birch Society, they want us to think it's too late. You guys are really wasting your time. We're not going to give you 2 cents worth of media. You're not going to make any headway here. We're going to do everything we can to discredit you. But ladies and gentlemen, they're not going to discredit truth. They have no power over truth. We have it. It's our secret weapon. Education is our strategy. We get the information. We put the information out on time. We get the information out. It's honest. It's correct research. And when you have the information on time or ahead of time, you can avoid the catastrophe. The young men who died last week on the Cole didn't know what hit them. Had someone known that a suicide boat was headed that way, had they known in advance, those lives would have been saved and the many injured would have been saved. We know in advance. We keep track. We know the enemy. When we say conspiracy, we understand conspiracy. We know how it works. It's not a point of ridicule among us. We know someone is planning the destruction of the United States. But this plan is still 99% hot air. And all they own is the White House. They do not own your congressman. They do not own New Hampshire or Massachusetts or Utah or Montana or New Mexico. They do not own the people. They do not own the states. The people are wholesome, patriotic. They love their country. They just don't know what to do. They've been bluffed. We have both the privilege and the responsibility of bringing to light the truth and of saving this great country. And by the grace of God, we will save America.
All right. I'd like to thank all the patrons and the sponsors we had advertisers to help fund this speech in the program flyer. If you didn't get one, take a look at it. these are the people that supported this speech. They're the people that support freedom. So you need to support them so they can do it again. And Don Fotheringham will take speeches after, off the podium. Or questions, right. And anybody interested in becoming a member of the John Birch Society can either talk to me, Bill right there, if you'll stand up, he talked earlier, or Richard Links in the back right there, standing up in the corner. Thanks for coming. That's it.
Ladies and gentlemen, just one moment. A lot of the things that Mr. Fotheringham spoke about tonight happen because good Americans get together and take this information that he was talking about and put it into action. We get this information, we put it into the hands of our leaders, who then put it into the hands of their people in their organized chapters in their areas, and then we take that information to our legislators, and if they don't like it, too bad. The ones who do, who will listen to their people, who will listen to their constituents, who will stand on principle, are the ones who are going to make the difference. Now, the other thing we do as members of the John Birch Society and leaders in the John Birch Society is we take this information and we try to spread it. As Mr. Fotheringham said, there are a lot of people out there who feel the way we feel about our Constitution. They feel the way we feel about our country, and they do not want it destroyed. They just, like he said, don't know what to do. And it is up to us to point out the direction and point the way for them. I would urge you, if you are a member of the John Birch Society, rededicate yourself to this work. Lengthen your stride. And if you're not a member of the John Birch Society, we need your help. And you need us, because we are the only organization capable of doing this, period. We have 42 years track record. Robert Welch had the vision and the foresight to see what was happening well before. I mean, we are so far advanced now along the road, but he saw it all well before. People thought he was crazy. The United Nations was a threat. Our sovereignty was in danger. We were strong. This was the late 50s we're talking about. Our economy was great. Everything was wonderful. And he saw the danger well in advance, and he warned the American people. Well, a lot of what he said has come to fruition long after he's passed from this world, but his legacy lives on.
We're just going to take a few questions, a very limited time, just one or two questions if we have some, and then this will be the end. And we appreciate you coming. Don, do you? Are there any questions? Or maybe Don.
If you don't have any, we feel like we've done our job.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. One question from Diane.
Could you speak just a little bit louder, please?
He proposed the New Deal.
Uh-huh.
The court at first, the Supreme Court at first said no deal. This is unconstitutional. Then they backed down.
Are you asking how it finally deteriorated? Well, he increased the number of people on the Supreme Court.
No, he didn't. I understand that he didn't. He threatened to do that.
But he
The
did.
same set of judges that backed down and said this New Deal, which was not constitutional, they did change the judges.
They did change, they increased the number. He gradually packed the Supreme Court with socialists. Yeah. The question was, how did Roosevelt manage to overcome the first decision of the Supreme Court that his acts were unconstitutional, that the New Deal was unconstitutional. And he got the Supreme Court off his back by putting in the right people, selected people, insiders.
To do that, he had to have the Senate that collaborated.
Absolutely, yes. The Senate was, what had happened, Roosevelt was so eminently popular that it shattered the confidence of the House and the Senate. They thought that he was getting popular support. It was this big phony cloud we talked about earlier. They thought he was getting popular support, and they were fearful of not getting popular support for themselves, so they went along with the president.
Of course, at that point, it didn't hurt to have the people electing the Senate directly.
Well, he corrupted the system by resorting to raw democracy with his radio appeals. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think that'll be it. We all have to get home, and we thank you very much for coming.